Good evening, friends. Welcome to today's session. Uh, Today is what? 26th November. So, आपको याद है आज के दिन क्या हुआ था? 26th November is very important day for the subject we are discussing now. जिसको हम सीख रहे हैं. Constitution of India was enacted and adopted on 26th November 1949, and that is why this day is celebrated as Constitution Day. So we are all law students. I mean, may not be with legal background, some of you, पर अब law सीख रहे हैं. Now we are learning law. So we are so much attached to law that we are now almost part of the legal fraternity. As a student, may not be as a lawyer, but as a student. So, a happy Constitution Day to all of you. Right? Before we start the session today, I have a few things to talk to you. Those who will be joining little late also, we'll try to involve them also. एक तो ये है कि आपको याद होगा, a few days back I had asked you a question कि आपको मेरे इस पढ़ाने का स्टाइल पसंद है या नहीं है. I mean, do you like or do you understand the way I am teaching you? If not, then you tell me where you are finding difficulty. But if yes, then tell others. Okay? Because you are not only my students, you are part of this B and by IAS family now. तो जो फैमिली मेंबर्स होते हैं वो क्या करते हैं कि दे ट्राई टू ग्रो द फैमिली, टू ब्रिंग अदर्स ऑल्सो इनटू द फोल्ड ऑफ द फैमिली. तो वो ड्यूटी आपकी है. मेरा काम है आपको पढ़ाना, आपको गाइड करना, आपको मेंटर करना. आपका काम है कि औरों को अपने साथ जोड़ना, to bring together into others into the family so that we grow together. देखिए, एक बात आपको बताऊं मैं कि नॉलेज जितनी आप बांटेंगे उतनी बढ़ेगी. Don't take that if more people, if you bring somebody into this fold of learning process, तो वो आपका कॉम्पिटिटर होगा. ठीक है, कॉम्पिटिटर तो वैसे भी है भाई. इवन इफ ही और शी इज नॉट पार्ट ऑफ योर लर्निंग प्रोसेस, स्टिल इफ ही और शी इज प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर द सिविल सर्विसेज, कंपटीशन तो है ही है. लेकिन एक नॉलेज को अगर हम बांटते हैं तो आपके ही जो साथ जुड़े हुए लोग हैं वो भी अच्छे नॉलेजेबल हो पाएंगे. एंड देन you will yourself assess your own potential कि उनके मुकाबले आप कितने बेहतर हैं या आपको कितना और बेहतर होना चाहिए, so that you can crack this examination. So my request is, if you have found that there are some areas where we need to improve, where we need to change our style to make it more understandable, then let me know. Now, I'll tell you that a couple of you have given me this feedback. क्या दिया है उन्होंने कि it's good that because we you people are writing the examination in English medium, but it is better understood by some of you. I'm not saying that all of you, but some of you have given this feedback that it will be better understood by us कि अगर आप उसको थोड़ा सा हिंदी में भी एक्सप्लेन करें. और फ्रैंकली स्पीकिंग मैं आपको एक बात बताऊं कि आई वुड ऑल्सो लव टू डू दैट, ए बाइलिंगुअल काइंड ऑफ ए टीचिंग, ए मिक्स ऑफ द टू, और ऐसे किया जाए कि जो इंग्लिश में समझ रहे हैं उनको भी कोई दिक्कत ना आए और जो हिंदी में है उनको और ज़्यादा क्लैरिटी हो सके. तो इससे क्या है, सबका फायदा होगा. नाउ इफ because I got some other feedback from my students from the south कि हमें हिंदी में समझ नहीं आता. ठीक है, आई अंडरस्टैंड दैट. तो उसमें हम क्या करेंगे कि लेट अस अडॉप्ट ए बाइलिंगुअल मेथड ऑफ टीचिंग, जहां पे इंग्लिश में भी बताया जाए और हिंदी में भी एक्सप्लेन किया जाए प्रोसेस को. जो टर्म्स हैं उनको हम चेंज नहीं कर सकते उनकी लैंग्वेज, क्योंकि हमारा मीडियम ही इंग्लिश है लिखने का वहाँ पे एग्जामिनेशन. तो लर्न द टर्म्स इन द लैंग्वेज विच यू हैव टू यूज इन द एग्जामिनेशन, लेकिन उनको समझो थोड़ा इस तरह से और उसको सिंप्लीफाई करके कि उसमें आपको और ज्यादा समझ आ सके. Yesterday somebody had asked me a question on NIA, National Investigation Agency, में के how they investigate, on whose direction, on whose orders. देखिए, NIA is also a police agency, an investigation agency which has got power to investigate. Now power to investigate कब मिलती है या उसको कौन देता है? Who gives that power? That power is given by law, and there are two ways of giving that power. One way is that CRPC in normal circumstances will confer that power on the police officers. CRPC से उनको इन्वेस्टिगेट करने की पावर मिलेगी. दूसरा होता है कि that particular act is a law passed by the parliament gives them the power. तो दो तरीके हैं, एक CRPC से, एक वो जो स्पेशल एनेक्टमेंट हुई है उससे. Now when we talk of NIA is a creation of a law, statutory authority है, जो एक स्टैट्यूट, एक लॉ से क्रिएट की गई है. Now definitely that law would give the power. जैसे CBI को कहां से मिली पावर? CBI got its power to investigate from DSP Act, that is Delhi Special Police Establishment Act. ऐसे ही NIA को पावर्स मिली है NIA एक्ट से, दैट्स द स्पेशल एनेक्टमेंट. अब सेक्शन 6 ऑफ दैट NIA एक्ट सेज, एक्चुअली ये मैं आपको अभी नहीं बताना चाहता था, बट सिंस वन ऑफ यू हैड आस्क्ड दिस क्वेश्चन, तो लेट मी एक्सप्लेन, क्योंकि ये हम लेना चाहते थे व्हेन वी स्टडी द लॉ सिलेबस. बट एनीवे, लेट अस बी क्लियर. अगर कोई दिमाग में डाउट आता है तो वी मस्ट क्लियर इट इमीडिएटली. सेक्शन 6 ऑफ NIA एक्ट सेज दैट व्हेन NIA किसके लिए क्रिएट की गई? टेररिस्ट एक्टिविटीज को इन्वेस्टिगेट करने के लिए, एक्ट्स ऑफ टेररिज्म. तो वो भी क्या है? एक कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस है. अब आप देखिए सेक्शन 154 ऑफ CRPC ये क्या कहता है कि वेन एवर an information about commission of a cognizable offense is reported or to a officer in charge of a police station. जब एक कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस की रिपोर्ट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑफिसर इंचार्ज, मतलब जिसको हम SHO भी कहते हैं, स्टेशन हाउस ऑफिसर, बट in the law he is termed as officer in charge. अब ऑफिसर इंचार्ज ऑफ पुलिस स्टेशन के पास एक कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस की इंफॉर्मेशन दी जाती है, मे बी बाई ए कंप्लेनेंट और बाई एनी अदर सोर्स, तो वो क्या करेगा, उसको रजिस्टर करेगा इन द फॉर्म ऑफ FIR, फर्स्ट इंफॉर्मेशन रिपोर्ट। हालांकि FIR टर्म कहीं भी CRPC में यूज नहीं की गई, FIR हैज नॉट बीन यूज्ड, बट इट इज फर्स्ट इन पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस एंड इज रिपोर्टेड। तो इंफॉर्मेशन शुड बी रिलेटिंग टू ए कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस। अब कोई टेररिज्म का एक्ट हो जाता है किसी भी पुलिस स्टेशन के जुरिस्डिक्शन में, अब टेरिटरी इंडिया की टेरिटरी कहीं भी होगा तो किसी ना किसी पुलिस स्टेशन की जुरिस्डिक्शन तो होगी वहां पे, तो उस पुलिस स्टेशन में एक FIR रजिस्टर की जाती है। नाउ लोकल पुलिस कम्स अंडर हुज जुरिस्डिक्शन, अंडर द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट। मैं आपको सारा प्रोसेस बता रहा हूं, स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम द रिपोर्टिंग ऑफ द इंफॉर्मेशन टू द पुलिस। अब पहले लोकल पुलिस के पास गया, 154 में एक FIR रजिस्टर हुई, वो FIR रजिस्टर की लोकल पुलिस ने जो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के अंडर है। नाउ स्टेट गवर्नमेंट when they examine the information or the FIR, they find that this is an act of terrorism. तो वो क्या करते हैं, they refer it to the central government. क्यों? क्योंकि NIA एक्ट प्रोवाइड करता है, NIA एक्ट में जो NIA क्रिएट हुई है, नेशनल इन्वेस्टिगेशन एजेंसी, that works under central government. Then central government will entrust the investigation to NIA. ये है सारा प्रोसेस। अगर एक इंफॉर्मेशन डायरेक्टली रिपोर्ट की जाती है पुलिस स्टेशन में अबाउट सम एक्ट ऑफ टेररिज्म, दिस इज वन वे। सेकेंड इज दूसरा क्या रास्ता है कि एक डायरेक्टली सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट सुओ मोटो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ऑर्डर्स एन इन्वेस्टिगेशन बाय NIA। तो ये दो मेन तरीके हैं, एक तो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट डायरेक्टली सुओ मोटो उस पर इन्वेस्टिगेशन इनिशिएट करवाएंगे NIA से, और द सेकेंड वे इज दैट द क्राइम हैज बीन रिपोर्टेड एट द लोकल पुलिस स्टेशन, FIR दर्ज हुई अंडर CRPC 154, गोज टू स्टेट गवर्नमेंट रेफर करती है सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को, और सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट विल ऑर्डर NIA टू इन्वेस्टिगेट। आई थिंक दैट विल कंप्लीट हिज answer, the answer to his question. So what I have now decided after feedback from a number of you, कि we will adopt a bilingual method of learning. ठीक है? Now if anybody has got any objection on this, please do let me know. आपको कोई नुकसान नहीं होगा, लेकिन सबका फायदा होगा। नुकसान इसलिए नहीं होगा कि इंग्लिश में भी आपको सारी टर्म्स एक्सप्लेन की जाएंगी, सारा चीज वैसे ही आपको गाइड किया जाएगा, द लैंग्वेज इन विच यू हैव टू राइट योर एग्जामिनेशन। और जो आपको क्वेश्चंस के आंसर्स बताए जाएंगे, द स्किल ऑफ राइटिंग आंसर्स, वो भी इंग्लिश में कराया जाएगा। लेकिन आपको जब समझाया जाएगा किसी भी टर्म को, तो वो एक बाइलिंगुअल मेथड में, जो आज मैं यूज कर रहा हूं, उसमें कराया जाएगा। आई थिंक दैट विल बी मोर बेनिफिशियल टू एवरीबॉडी, बिकॉज आई एम क्वाइट कंफर्टेबल बोथ वेज। मुझे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, मैं प्योरली इंग्लिश में भी दे सकता हूँ, मैं बाइलिंगुअल में भी दे सकता हूँ। हाँ, सिर्फ मुझे अगर आप हिंदी में बोलने को कहेंगे तो दैट विल बी डिफिकल्ट फॉर मी। Again, those who were missing in the beginning of the session, a happy Constitution Day, 26th November 1949. Our Constitution was adopted, enacted, and then some parts of it came into force immediately, and the rest of the Constitution became enforceable from 26th January 1950. But 26th November is celebrated as the Constitution Day. So, being from the legal fraternity, we should all celebrate this day by taking a pledge to abide by the Constitution. Okay. So, today's topic is National Human Rights Commission. It's an important commission because of this, the human rights, which are very important for the dignified existence of all of us human beings. It has been accepted all over the world, in every country, that human beings are the most important persons on this earth for every nation, for every state. ये स्टेट की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है कि वो अपने लोगों की, अपने सिटीजन्स की, जो ह्यूमन बींग्स हैं, जो वो उनका वो आदर करें, उनका ख्याल रखें। रिमेंबर आर्टिकल 21 that life and personal liberty are very important, and that life and personal liberty is to be ensured. It is a fundamental right. In fact, the very origin of this Article 21, which provides a dignified life, of course, it is not written in Article 21, but Supreme Court, through various judgments, landmark judgments, has clarified that life does not mean only animal existence. Life means a dignified life. A life where nobody intrudes into your privacy. You have certain freedoms, of course. No freedom comes without a corresponding duty or responsibility. So, अगर हमें कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन फंडामेंटल राइट्स दे रहा है फॉर ए डिग्निफाइड लाइफ, फॉर आवर पर्सनल लिबर्टी, हमारी आज़ादी के लिए, तो वहीं पर हमारे ऊपर रीजनेबल रिस्ट्रिक्शंस भी हैं दैट वी हैव टू अबाइड बाय द सुप्रीम लॉ, दैट इज द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया. एंड even this life or personal liberty can be taken away by following a procedure established by law. Even Article 21 itself says that though life and personal liberty are guaranteed, but they are subject to laws. And laws means a procedure established by law through which this life or personal liberty can be taken away. Up to after Maneka Gandhi's judgment, the scope of this procedure established by law has been further expanded. It is now very close to American due process. So human rights are very, very important for the very existence of the human being. That is why the state has given a commission, a very high level body. It's not a constitutional body. इसका ओरिजिन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में नहीं है, वो हम देखेंगे कैसे आया है. बट द फर्स्ट थिंग इज इट इज ए नॉन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडी, not a creation of the constitution, but creation of the state. And the state felt the need that if any human rights violation is there, that means by any authority, if there is a human rights violation, then that should be reported to, that should be examined by a very high level body, and appropriate action should be initiated. Now, this body is both at national as well as state level. National level par bhi hai, there is one single commission, that's the NHRC, which we are going to study now. And then there are state human rights commissions. In respective states, there are about 26 of them. That also we will learn today. These two are very important bodies, non-constitutional bodies. So let us start with them. The establishment of the commission. ये कब बनाया गया commission? It is a statutory body. That means it is a creation of a statute, a law. So whenever you see these kind of, now I think you should be very well familiar with these terms, कि constitutional authority अगर बोला जाए तो its origin is in the constitution. If it is called statutory body, in that case इसका origin कहाँ होगा? एक law में, एक statute में. So let us see which law has created this commission. The law is Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993. So इससे दो चीजें एस्टेब्लिश हो गई. क्या? एक तो ये कमीशन बना 1993 में और इसका ओरिजिन है दिस लॉ, दिस स्टैट्यूट. So इसलिए it is called a statutory body. Now it is termed in common terms as the watchdog of human rights in the country. अभी मैंने बताया कि ह्यूमन राइट्स बेसिक राइट्स हैं एक ह्यूमन बीइंग की डिग्निफाइड एग्जिस्टेंस के लिए. सो somebody, some agency, some statutory body has been created which will keep an eye over, any such incidents where these human rights have either been violated or there has been some adverse effect on the rights of a human being. एक इंसान की अपनी एग्जिस्टेंस के लिए जो राइट्स उसको चाहिए, जिंदा एक डिग्निफाइड लाइफ के लिए, उसको प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए देयर शुड बी ए वॉचडॉग टू कीप एन आई ओवर दैट. राइट? सो व्हाट आर द ऑब्जेक्टिव्स ऑफ द एस्टेब्लिशमेंट? आपने एक बॉडी तो बना दी अंडर दिस लॉ. नाउ इसके जो ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं, टू स्ट्रेंथन द इंस्टीट्यूशनल अरेंजमेंट्स फॉर ह्यूमन राइट्स. नाउ व्हाट इज दिस टर्म इंस्टीट्यूशनल अरेंजमेंट? इंस्टीट्यूशन होता है एक बॉडी होती है जिसको जो एक पर्टिकुलर एक्टिविटी के लिए बनाई जाती है. अब आपका एक कॉलेज है, दैट इज ऑल्सो एन इंस्टीट्यूशन. योर इंस्टीट्यूट इज ए इंस्टीट्यूशन. Similarly, a commission like this is also a body, an institution. ये क्या होता है? It is like you are giving a proper shape, a proper direction. उसको एक तरह से आप ये समझिए कि you are giving a direction and you are trying to control the whole situation. इंस्टीट्यूशन का मतलब ही होता है कंट्रोल करना उसको, कि कैसे करोगे ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशन को एक इंस्टीट्यूशनल अरेंजमेंट के जरिए. दैट इंस्टीट्यूशनल अरेंजमेंट इज दिस कमीशन. एंड स्ट्रेंथन, क्योंकि पहले क्या था, इट इज नॉट दैट देयर वर नो रिड्रेसल फॉर ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशन बिफोर द कमीशन केम इनटू बीइंग. इट वाज बीइंग डन नॉट इन ए प्रॉपर इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज्ड मैनर. एक प्रॉपर रास्ते से, एक सही डायरेक्शन से नहीं किया जा रहा था. इट वाज बीइंग डन हियर एंड देयर. So to bring it under one scope, the scope of one body, it was to strengthen the institutional arrangement by creation of a commission to look into allegations of excesses independently of the government. अब पहले क्या था, before this commission came into being, the government bodies were themselves looking into the violations, the cases, incidents of violation of human rights. अब क्या हो गया, the government has been kept out. क्यों? Why? The reason being, the agencies or the persons who are being accused of human rights violation, who are they? They are basically government servants. Either it may be police or any other administrative authority. अब mainly human rights violation क्या होते हैं? See, if somebody is in the custody of the police, they are being tortured by using third degree or illegal methods. So that is a main cause of human violation. Maximum incidents are reported on that only. Second thing is, there is an excessive use of force against any group of human beings or maybe a single human being. Every human being, every human life is important as far as human rights are concerned. अगर एक भी इंसान का कोई ह्यूमन राइट वायलेशन होता है, that itself is a very, very serious matter. So, to look into the allegations of excesses. See, sometimes the police or the the law enforcement agencies have to use force. कैसे? अब आज का एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं. I'll take today's example. This farmers' agitation is going on. Now, I also come from Haryana. I live in Gurgaon. So I had to come to Delhi. Now, before starting from my home, I was watching TV. So in that news, the what you call is a breaking news was that some farmers, organizations, individuals, groups, they were trying to cross into Haryana from Punjab, because they wanted to come to Delhi. So, what we saw there was that first there were barricades. Barricade लगाए गए, तो barricade उन्होंने हटा दिए by force. And then they tried to remove some vehicles which were blocking the national highway. तब तक पुलिस ने कुछ नहीं किया, वो पीछे चलते रहे. अब उनको रोकना है because there were restrictions imposed by the administration. वो restrictions कैसे होती हैं? Section 144 CRPC में लगाई जाती है. Restricting the movement of 5 or more people, they're gathering at one place, movement, a number of restrictions can be imposed by the administration, and they are permitted by law. They are not illegal restrictions. If they anticipate some kind of law and order problems, and you are also going to be part of that administrative setup, after clearing this examination as an IAS officer, when you will be posted in the fields, you will be facing these kind of situations quite often. तो उसमें क्या हुआ? The police had to enforce law. So what they did? They started using water cannons. Now water cannons means water is thrown with pressure on the people, human beings. But it is permitted by law because that force is not excessive force. Second part was they started using tear gas shells. And then, that also has got effect on the human bodies. It creates a smoke and, tears start falling from your eyes and you can't see properly. So they try to disperse. The main objective of the law enforcement agencies was at that time to enforce the law, disperse the crowd with minimum possible force. Now suppose situation is there, and a law and order situation is there, where excessive force is used. There are allegations of excessive force के साथ इतनी जरूरत नहीं थी, फायरिंग की जरूरत नहीं थी, लाठीचार्ज से काम हो सकता था. They could have controlled the situation with water cannon. They could have controlled the situation with tear gas or lathi. Why bullet? So even use of this is how an investigation has to be done to find out whether there was excessive use of force against the human beings or not. So आज जब मैं आ रहा था तो the border was totally sealed. This Delhi Haryana border. I had to wait in the traffic jam for almost 2 hours at one place at border itself. But I didn't want to miss your class today. So I landed up here at around 2:30 or so, almost 3 o'clock. Which normally otherwise I come here by 12. So 2 to 2.5 hours I was standing in the jam only. But that is done for maintenance of law and order. We were not cribbing because that was a normal use of force, not excessive use of force. But had there been a sudden, a lathi charge by the law enforcement agencies, police or maybe a rapid action force or any other law maintenance body, then there could have been allegations of excessive use of force and violation of human rights. This is how we reach at this term excesses. Excessive use of force. So, to complement and strengthen the efforts that have already been made in this direction. So, this was the objective कि जो पहले से सिस्टम बना हुआ था, redressal of the human rights violation complaints or incidents, allegations, वो पहले भी हो रहा था, बट उसको स्ट्रेंथन करना था, उसको कॉम्प्लीमेंट करना है, so that human rights violation allegations could be properly looked into. These are the objectives of this commission. Now let us see the composition of this commission. The composition is, it's a very high level body. Let me tell you one thing. The chairperson is none other than a retired Chief Justice of India or a judge of the Supreme Court. So you can imagine the level of this commission and look at the members: serving or retired judge of the Supreme Court, serving or retired Chief Justice of a High Court, not a judge of a High Court, but serving or retired Chief Justice of a High Court. 3 persons, at least 1 woman, experience with respect to human rights. So that is to be decided by the government. But look at the top, the chairperson and the first two members. It is 1 plus 5. One is chairman, then 5 other members. And out of 5 members, 2 are serving or retired judges of Supreme Court and a Chief Justice of a High Court. And then 3 persons. Then there are 7 ex officio members. Ex officio, I have already told you, by virtue of holding an office, because they are already holding an office and they are also now will be serving as member of this high level commission. कौन है? They are the chairpersons of National Commission for Minorities, National Commission for SCs, National Commission for STs, National Commission for Women, National Commission for Backward Classes, National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, and Chief Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities. अब आप ये सोचेंगे, why these chairpersons are to be taken as ex officio members? Now look at their composition. Minorities, SCs, STs, women, backward classes, children, and physically disabled. Now these are all vulnerable sections of the society. Why they are vulnerable? Because of their position. Minorities, SCs, STs, women, children, disabled. Now these are the vulnerable against whom the physical force is normally or generally used. And that is why their human rights violations are very, very common. They are the most commonly reported human rights violations against these because of their vulnerability. So that is why the chairpersons of their respective commissions, we have already studied. There are these commissions, we have already seen their constitution and their functioning and what for they have been created. तो जो उनके चेयरपर्सन्स हैं उनको भी यहाँ पे एक्स ऑफिशियो मेंबर्स बनाया गया है इस कमीशन में. Now how the appointment is done? So what is the total composition is 1 plus 5 plus 7 ex officio. Right? So total 13. Appointment, chairperson and members are appointed by the president. Now president has to follow a certain procedure. That procedure is also laid down. It is to be done on the recommendation of a high level committee. Now what is that high level committee? There are 6 members in this committee. This committee consists of Prime Minister as its head, Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Now, why not Chairman? Because Chairman is Vice President. Okay, that is why Deputy Chairman. Leaders of opposition in both the houses, Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha, and the Central Home Minister. So, plus in addition to these members, these 5 members, and headed by Prime Minister, a sitting judge of the Supreme Court or a sitting Chief Justice of a High Court can be appointed only after consultation with the Chief Justice of India. Now we have seen there is this Chief Justice of a High Court or retired judge of a Supreme Court. In their case, because they belong to the judiciary. So that is why wherever a judicial officer, whether serving or retired, is appointed to any commission Generally, the consultation with Chief Justice of India is done, and this is what is mandatory here. Term is for 3 years or till the age of 70 years. Now, why this 70 years? Because what is the age limit for Judge of a Supreme Court? 65 years. So, if he is a retired judge, he has already attained the age of 65 years. So, 70 years and then 3 years, whichever is early. Eligible for reappointment. That means if he has retired, completed his term, can be reappointed. But there is no further employment under the central or a state government. That means he cannot be appointed to any other post either under the state government or under the central government. Now that is appointment. How to remove? Removal is also tough. Done, appointed by president and to be removed by the president only. But under certain conditions. What are these conditions? He is adjudged as insolvent. He is paid employment. He has taken paid employment outside the duties of his office. Unfit to continue in office by reason of infirmity of mind or body. Unsound mind and stand so declared by a competent court. See, for declaring somebody as unsound mind, we need a court order, which will depend, of course, depend on the medical condition, certification by a medical board. Convicted and sentenced to imprisonment for an offense. Also ground of proved misbehavior, but in that case, an inquiry is to be conducted by the Supreme Court. So, under these conditions only, they can be removed. Salaries, allowances, and other conditions are determined by the central government, but they should not be to the disadvantage after the appointment. Now, functions are many, A to J. So, we will have to just see the main functions. To inquire violation of human rights or negligence in by a public servant, either suo moto or in a petition or an order of a court. अब इसमें आप कहेंगे कि how the action is initiated by the NHRC. So there are 3 ways. One is suo moto on their own. They can take cognizance of any reported case of excesses against or human rights violation and take action, or there is a petition, or there is an order of a court. To intervene in any proceeding involving allegation of violation of human rights pending before a court. What does it mean? कि एक मामला ऑलरेडी कोर्ट में चल रहा है. There is already a proceeding before a court of law. In that case also, if there are allegations of human rights violation, the NHRC can take action on that. Now, where the most human rights violations take place? Under the custodies. Now, custody is mainly in jails or any detention places. So, they visit these places and inquire into the allegations of violation of human rights. To review the constitutional and other safeguards. Now, what are the constitutional safeguards? We have already seen in Article 21, life and personal liberty is a major one of that, and there can be other legal safeguards also. To review the factors including acts of terrorism that inhibit the enjoyment of human rights and recommend remedial measures. That means there can be some acts of terrorism by which the human rights violation have taken place. Now you may say, a question may come to your mind, can there be a human rights violation against a terrorist also? If somebody has committed an act of terrorism, he has definitely violated the human rights of the other people, a common man, or the victims. Definitely, there is no doubt about that. But what about himself? Now, if suppose he has been caught by the law enforcement agencies and then subjected to human rights violation by use of third degree methods. So there's again a violation against a person who has himself perpetuated the act of terrorism. जिसने खुद टेररिज्म किया है, वो भी एलिगेशन लगा सकता है कि साहब मेरे साथ भी ज्यादती हुई है. कैसे हुई है? बिकॉज आई हैव बीन टॉर्चर्ड बाय द पुलिस और एनी अदर एजेंसी. So that also will have to be looked into by the Commission to study treaties and other international instruments on human rights. मैंने पहले भी बताया आपको कि human rights is considered most important right in every country, especially in the democratic setups. I'm not talking of dictatorship. डिक्टेटरशिप में क्या है कि दे आर लीस्ट बॉदर्ड अबाउट द ह्यूमन राइट्स ऑफ द सिटीजन्स. बट इन डेमोक्रेसी, इन एनी डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्री, ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशन इज टेकन एज ए वेरी सीरियस इशू. एंड दैट इज वाई every country, every democratic country, or every country which respects human rights, they enter into international treaties to create certain benchmarks, certain conditions which must be ensuring the human rights, enjoyment of human rights by human beings. So ये जो commission है, they look into these international treaties also, because a lot of information comes from there. How the world is moving towards protection of human rights. So many conventions are there. You'll be studying in your general studies. So many conventions are there. And those conventions, treaties, they are studied by the Commission to undertake and promote research in the field of human rights, to spread human rights literacy and promote awareness. This is very important. See, in a country where the literacy level is so low, the poverty is very high, there the people are not aware of their own rights. लोगों को अपने rights का ही नहीं पता, because ये एक तो पहला है कि they are not literate, they are not educated, इतना पढ़े लिखे नहीं है. दूसरा क्या है, दूसरी प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि they are ridden with poverty, गरीबी ज़्यादा है. तो उन लोगों को अपने राइट्स का ही नहीं पता होता. तो दिस इज अगेन वन ऑफ द टास्क ऑफ द NHRC to spread the human rights literacy and promote awareness, to encourage the efforts of non-governmental organizations. Now this is one area which is very important, but also subject to number of allegations of misuse also. What are these NGOs? ये NGOs है क्या? Non-governmental organizations. इनकी जरूरत क्यों होती है और क्या होती है? देखिए, कोई भी गवर्नमेंट है, उसके पास इतना काम, इतने टास्क होते हैं करने के लिए कि दे आर नॉट एबल टू implement everything with their own machinery. The machinery is very limited. Population is very large. 135 करोड़ लोग हैं, लेकिन कुछ लाख लोग ही गवर्नमेंट की सर्विस में हैं, जो कि गवर्नमेंट की ऑर्डर्स को, पॉलिसीज को, लॉज को एनफोर्स करते हैं। तो क्या होता है, उसका बेनिफिट जो है डज नॉट रीच एवरीबॉडी। टेक द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ एजुकेशन। अब एजुकेशन में सी, इफ यू गो बाय द टीचर स्टूडेंट रेशियो, you will find that the ratio is not good. For, let's say, 40-60 students, there is one teacher. For 100 students, there is one teacher. So they are not able to deliver. तो उसमें क्या होता है कि some non-governmental organizations, they come forward and they say we will supplement the government's efforts, चाहे वो हेल्थ है, चाहे एजुकेशन है, और एनी अदर फील्ड। दे कम फॉरवर्ड voluntarily and without charging any money. Please, they are not paid. Yes, they have their own resources by way of donations, but they are not paid by the government. They are not purely non-governmental organizations, and they come forward and supplement the work. Now, here also, in the case of human rights violations, there are certain NGOs who are supplementing the efforts of even the commission to see that there are no human rights violations, and if there are any, they are reported, investigated, and taken care of. Responsibilities are fixed, and the action is initiated. How, that we will see later, but there are NGOs who are involved in this activity, and the commission encourages them because they are in turn helping the commission to undertake such other functions as it may consider necessary for the promotion of human rights. Its headquarters in Delhi and can also establish offices at other places. It has power to regulate its own procedure. There is no procedure laid down as to how they will be functioning, but they have evolved their own procedure of functioning. Now, the next one is important, powers of a civil code. I have already discussed earlier about on this, what are the powers of a civil code. क्या होती है? To summon the witnesses, to summon documents, to examine them on oath, like a court. They are not court, but they act like a court. And that is why now human rights violations, allegations need a proper inquiry, investigation. तो इसीलिए जुडिशियल ऑफिसर्स को इस पे लगाया गया है. The retired or serving Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of India, or a sitting or retired judge of a Supreme Court, he is the chairperson. And there are other judicial members in the rank of Chief Justice of a High Court. So they know the judicial process. That's why some powers of a civil court are given to them, so that its proceedings have a judicial character. Now, may call for information or report from central and state governments or any other authorities subordinate to them. That means they can call for any report from any authority. See, when I was working as a resident commissioner here in Delhi, so there was an incident of a girl being tortured. A girl and a boy who had got married outside their caste. So they were tortured by threatened and tortured by a certain groups of people. अब क्या हुआ? police started taking sides with them, with those people who were torturing them. There was a police failure on part of the police authorities and district administration to stop this activity, which was violating their human rights. So that matter was reported to NHRC, that came before the National Human Rights Commission. I was called by them, by the chairperson, and then he asked for a report from the state government, क्योंकि I was the representative of state government here. तो उन्होंने कहा कि आप अपनी गवर्नमेंट से हमें रिपोर्ट दीजिए, ये आपके गवर्नमेंट यहाँ अथॉरिटीज के अगेंस्ट एक पेटिशन हमें मिली या कंप्लेंट मिली है. So I had to get a report from the district collector and superintendent of police. Through the government it came, and then it was submitted to the NHRC. So they can call for report from any authority. And they also have their own investigating staff. वहाँ पे NHRC में there is an investigation wing. Now that wing has got either serving or retired IPS or other officers who have experience in law enforcement. So they have their own investigation wing, which is consisting of very senior law enforcement officers. Now they are empowered to utilize the services of any officer or investigation agency. They can ask any police officer, any police authority, either state or central, to investigate. Cooperation with NGOs with first-hand information. This I have already explained. Look into a matter within 1 year of occurrence. This is an area which is of concern to many. That means when the incident has been reported to have occurred, within 1 year of that incident, the commission has power to look into that allegation. If it is more than 1 year, they have no powers. ये एक स्टम्बलिंग ब्लॉक है जिसको कि क्रिटिसाइज भी किया गया है. इट कैन कम even in a critical examination also, that the matter was more than 1 year old, and some jurists and some other authorities have also reported that there should be a change in the system, कि अगर the delay is justified, as in the case of limitation also. We have seen in the Limitation Act Section 5, if there is a sufficient cause, sufficient reason that delay could be justified, then it should be period of limitation should be relaxed, condoned, it's called, condoned. But in this case, there is no such provision. If the incident is more than 1 year old, then they cannot look into that. The commission may recommend authority to make compensation. Now, what happens after the inquiry or the investigation or examination by the commission? They give their recommendation to make any compensation or damages to the victim in terms of money. Okay, they recommend only. Their job is advisory and recommendatory in nature and not mandatory or binding. Recommend initiation of proceedings against public servants. That means जिसके खिलाफ कंप्लेंट है और उसके अगेंस्ट इनके हिसाब से प्रूव हो जाता है, then they recommend action against that public servant. So they may recommend compensation or they may recommend action. Recommend grant of immediate interim relief till the final orders are passed or finally the matter is decided. They may ask for a immediate interim relief also. approach the Supreme Court or High Court concerned for the necessary directions, orders, or writs. So sometimes the matter could be violation of a fundamental right. And if they feel, the commission feels, okay, look, there is a need for a writ petition or a writ or an order from Supreme Court or High Court, then they may recommend that also. So their role is basically recommendatory nature. They have no power to punish the violators. That means they cannot mete out any punishment, nor to award any relief, including monetary relief. They cannot order relief, they can only recommend relief. Recommendations are not binding. This is another criticism, that they are not given enough teeth. उनको इतनी पावर्स नहीं है कि वो खुद कोई पनिशमेंट दे सकें या खुद कोई रिलीफ ऑर्डर कर सकें. So what happens? They give recommendation to the concerned authorities. But it should be informed about the action taken on its recommendations within 1 month. That means once the recommendations have been made by the commission, within 1 month the authorities must report to them as to what action has been taken. Commission has limited role in case of armed forces because armed forces have different set of roles. They have different set of rules because of their different functioning. May seek a report from central government and make its recommendation. Central government should inform the commission of the action taken. Annual or special reports, central government and state government, their reports will be sent to the central government and the state government, and through the government it will be placed before the respective legislature. In the case of center, before the parliament, or in the case of state, it should be before the state legislature, with a memorandum of action taken and the reasons for non-acceptance of any recommendations. That means if this government feels that no action is required, then when it is, placed before the house, before the parliament or the state legislature, they must give a reason for non-compliance in the form of a memorandum. Now, I'll touch upon a very important issue, on which a question could be asked. That is, when the NHRC is such a high-level body, it's a very strong institution, then why it is not given any powers? Its role is only recommendatory in nature. None of its recommendations has mandatory role. It is left to the concerned authorities. Now, I tell you one thing, this is one criticism. So, if you are asked to write a critical note on that, critically examine this statement, तो आप क्या लिखेंगे? सबसे पहले कि what is the criticism? Criticism is that it's a high-level body, high-powered body, consisting of judges of the highest level. Still, its recommendations are not mandatory. They cannot even give monetary relief. But it is not that easy for any authority or any government, this is the other side, to overlook their recommendations, because they have got such a heavy weight in the eyes of the people. Once NHRC has given an adverse report or made any recommendation for monetary relief, it is very, very difficult for any state or central government or any other authority to overlook that. There will be a large hue and cry. If a particular public servant has been held to be culprit or who has perpetuated and the allegations are proved as per NHRC, if we look at the performance is very, very encouraging. On their recommendations, they have done so much of things. What they have done, they have got the bonded labor abolition. It's not truly, completely eradicated, but controlled to a large extent because of their efforts. Functioning of mental hospitals, functioning of government protective homes for women at Agra, issue concerning right to food, Child Marriage Restraint Act was reviewed, protocols to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. There are so many of them. In fact, there are more than 39. So all these you will be getting, but this is again a plus point which should come in your answer. Okay, look, if we go by their performance, they have acted so well in every sphere of activity where there could be a human rights violation. Now we come to the State Human Rights Commission. Now, on the line of the National Human Rights Commission, the states also have their own respective human rights commissions. So, there is a Protection of Human Rights Act. Same act gives the powers to constitute state SHRCs. Now, there is a National Human Rights Commission at center and state human rights commissions at the state level. 26 states have got such commissions at state level. They inquire into violation of human rights only in respects of. Now here again the federal system will come into play. हमारा सिस्टम क्या है? फेडरल है. That means states को भी autonomy है. And there is a separation of powers between center and state. Center will not unnecessarily intrude into the powers of the states. So in that case, जो सब्जेक्ट स्टेट लिस्ट में है और कॉन्करेंट लिस्ट में है इन द 7th शेड्यूल, ये कौन सी लिस्ट है? उन सब्जेक्ट्स पे जहां पे स्टेट कैन मेक लॉज, और इन द कॉन्करेंट लिस्ट आल्सो द स्टेट्स आर एम्पावर्ड टू मेक लॉज. So only on those subjects the state human rights commissions can look into that. If NHRC or other statutory commission inquiring into a case, then HSRC does not. That means अगर पहले ही जो matter है it is before NHRC or any other statutory commission, that means created by any law, any other commission, then HSRC, the state commissions will not look into that. Now, central government confer upon the HSRC functions relating to human rights being discharged by the union territories except Union Territory of Delhi, which is dealt with NHRC. That means जो यूनियन टेरिटरीज है उनको भी किसी स्टेट में स्टेट के कमीशन के अंडर ले आते हैं, and that is done by the central government except Delhi where NHRC has got the direct jurisdiction. Composition is, it's a multi-member body, chairperson and 2 members. Chairperson is a retired Chief Justice or a judge of a High Court. There it was Supreme Court, now it is High Court. Members are serving or retired judge of a High Court or a district judge in the state with a minimum of 7 years of experience as district judge. And the second is a person having knowledge or practical experience with respect to human rights. So basically 3 members, 1 chairman and 2 members. Appointment, here it is done by the governor, but the selection committee consists of Chief Minister of the state, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, State Home Minister, Leader of Opposition in the Legislative Assembly, and Chairman of Legislative Council. Now, every state does not have a Legislative Council. So, wherever Legislative Council is there, their chairman and leader of the opposition in that council. Further, a sitting judge of a high court or a sitting district judge can be appointed only after a consultation with the Chief Justice of that high court having jurisdiction in that state. Term is 3 years or 70 years of age. Not eligible. Here they are not eligible for reappointment. In NHRC, they were eligible for reappointment. Appointed by the governor, but they are removed by the president. This is the difference. So, removal is on the same grounds as in the case of NHRC. Those grounds are same. Functions of the commission, again, to inquire violation of human rights or negligence in by a public servant, either suo motu or on a petition or on the order of a court. In a similar manner, to intervene in any proceeding involving allegation of violation of human rights pending before a court, to visit jails and detention places, to review the constitutional and other legal safeguards. It's on the same lines. Now, power to regulate its own procedure. Powers of a civil court are given, and the proceedings have a judicial character. May call for information report from central and state. Here they can even call for information from central government also, because sometimes the central government may be having an involvement. Their public servant, the servants may be having the nucleus of a investigating staff. They have their own investigating staff also. So they can utilize the services of any officer or investigation agency. Cooperation with NGOs, look into the matter. Again, that 1 year limit is there, 1 year of its occurrence. So, commission may recommend to state government and authority, that means recommendations are to the state government. Recommend initiation of proceedings against public servants, grant of immediate interim relief. So, here it is compensation or damages, or approach the Supreme Court for High Court for appropriate rate. So, mainly again recommendatory in nature, no power to punish the violators, not to award any relief, same manners as NHRC. Now, their annual report is submitted to the state government, not to the central government, state government, and then laid before the state legislature. So, if there is non-acceptance, then memorandum has to be given. So, here there is another human rights courts. This is another institution. What is that? Under the Act, human rights courts in every district have to be nominated or created. Special courts set up by state government only with the concurrence of the Chief Justice of the High Court. Now, for every human rights court, the state government specify a public prosecutor or appoints an advocate who has practiced for 7 years as a special public prosecutor. Now, what is the role of a public prosecutor or special PP? They are called PPs. They represent the state. State versus whenever there is a criminal activity, and human rights violation is also a criminal activity. It's not a civil thing. If there are excesses against a human body, it amounts to a criminal offense. Now we come to another National Disaster Management Authority. We have seen NHRC, State Human Rights Commission. Now we come to another new authority, which is also a statutory authority, National Disaster Management Authority. We'll see why and how it was created, for what purpose. Now, what is a disaster? A disaster is something which is destructive in nature, which destroys either human lives or the property. So, there is a loss of human life, or there could be a loss of or damage to the property, or both. So, a disaster results in that. It is always destructive in nature. डिजास्टर जैसे क्या होता है, जो ह्यूमन लाइफ को या ह्यूमन जो हमारी प्रॉपर्टीज हैं उनको डिस्ट्रॉय कर देता है या उनको डैमेज कर देता है. जैसे साइक्लोन है, अर्थक्वेक है, आग लग जाती है, फ्लड्स आ जाते हैं. दीज आर ऑल डिजास्टर्स, डैमेजिंग इन नेचर. अब पहले क्या होता था कि ये जो तीनों एजेंसीज बनी है ना, NHRC, स्टेट ह्यूमन राइट्स कमीशन एंड NDMA, ये इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज किया गया है एफर्ट्स को कि ये जो पहले ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशन थे उनको कैसे कंट्रोल और उनको कैसे एड्रेस किया जाए, एंड हियर हाउ द डिजास्टर सिचुएशन शुड बी एड्रेस्ड इन ए प्रॉपर इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज्ड मैनर. इसकी जरूरत कब पड़ी? इसकी जरूरत पड़ी 2004 में सुनामी आई थी. You know, the eastern coast was very badly affected. Tsunami came in Bay of Bengal in 2004. And prior to that, there was a high-powered committee in 1999 recognizing the importance of disaster management. पहले क्या होता था? Before even this committee was constituted, wherever there was effect of any disaster, it was mainly left to the local authorities like the district administration or the police or the state governments with the help of central agencies assistance to address, to manage that situation. लेकिन वो एक concerted effort नहीं होती थी. That used to be a kind of एक डैमेज हो गया या हो रहा है, उसको कैसे ठीक किया जाए. नॉट ए कंसर्टेड एफर्ट कि एक प्लान से उसको किया जाए, वो एडहॉक तरीके से होता था. ए सिचुएशन हैज कम, एड्रेस दैट एंड set it right, try to extend help to the people, mitigate their sufferings. लेकिन a committee was constituted in 1999. That committee was meant for what? Basically coordination, better coordination. अब ये कमेटी की जरूरत कैसे पड़ी थी कि पहले तो था कि रिकॉग्नाइज द इम्पोर्टेंस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट. पहले यही नहीं था. इट वाज लाइक ठीक है, अगर डिजास्टर हो गया तो लोकल अथॉरिटीज इसको देखेंगी, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट देखेगी, जो उनको असिस्टेंस चाहिए होगी सेंट्रल असेस करेगा और उनको वो असिस्टेंस दे दी जाएगी. लेकिन एक प्रॉपर उसको रिकॉग्नाइज करना के लुक, there is a need for proper disaster management. That first time happened in 1999 when a committee was constituted. अब उसके फौरन बाद क्या हुआ कि 2001 में गुजरात में अर्थक्वेक आया, भुज and those areas. It was very devastating. State government was not able to handle it. So there was a need for a national committee, national body. So earlier, it was just a high-powered committee to oversee the national disaster, just to recognize the importance of national disaster, the disaster management. But when it happened in Gujarat in 2001, on such a large-scale destruction, and then coordination was required, better coordination was required, and that is how a committee at national level was constituted, because state government was not capable of handling it. It was of such proportions. Then came the tsunami of 2004, which affected state of Tamil Nadu, UT of Puducherry, and Kerala. So primarily, these were the states and some parts of Andhra also, but main brunt was on Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, and Kerala. So the respective state governments, it was of such a magnitude, state governments were not able to handle it. So that time, it was felt that there should be a statutory body created by law. And that is how the Disaster Management Act of 2005 was passed. And NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, was created under this law. That is why it is called statutory authority. Now, initially, it was not made immediately the statutory authority. First, it was constituted in 2005 by an executive order. But later on, a year after that, in 2006, it was brought under the provisions of this act and made a statutory body. Now, this is the apex body, the top level body for disaster management in the country, and it works under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Vision is to build a safer and disaster resilient India. Now, what is the meaning of resilient? One is management. When something happens, some disaster happens, first thing is how to prevent it. Now, there are certain disasters and most of them cannot be prevented. अभी recently कल ही हमने देखा है कि there was a cyclone Nivar which hit the Tamil Nadu and Puducherry. Now, can anybody prevent a cyclone? Can anybody prevent an earthquake? No. But what the administration can do, and they have done it over a period of time, created cyclone shelters. Now, what are these shelters? That when there is a warning of a cyclone, the people could be evacuated from the coastal areas or the areas where there could be an effect of that cyclone, and shift them to safer places. These are cyclone shelters. अब आपको मैं बताता हूँ साइक्लोन शेल्टर्स की ज्यादातर शेप क्या होती है? राउंड. क्यों होती है? क्योंकि when cyclone comes, it comes with very high speed winds. Of course, heavy rain is there, but high speed winds. Actually, the intensity of a cyclone is measured in terms of the wind speed, because that causes the maximum destruction. पेड़ उखड़ जाते हैं, आपके इलेक्ट्रिसिटी पोल्स, टेलीफोन पोल्स, कम्युनिकेशन चैनल्स वो डैमेज हो जाते हैं, छतें उड़ जाती हैं, वीक हाउसेस get damaged, and areas get flooded because of heavy rain accompanying the high winds, high speed winds. तो उनको क्या होता है, जो राउंड बिल्डिंग होती है, इट्स परफेक्टली राउंड. I have worked there, I have seen, I have evacuated people during cyclone times when I was SDM. So what happens in these round buildings are aerodynamic in nature, in structure. So they have, even if the wind speed is very high, there are less chances or the least chances of a round building getting damaged. यहाँ corners नहीं होते, corners होंगे तो वो damage हो जाते, right? So these are the preventive measures. Now, second part of this is that you prepare that. First is preventive measures like this. Prepare the administration for any possible disaster. Floods are there. How to check the dams, make the check dams, temporary check dams, divert the flow of the water. अब अर्थक्वेक में कुछ हो नहीं सकता क्योंकि वो तो एक सडनली आता है एंड कॉजेज लॉट ऑफ डैमेजेस. So in that case, evacuation. Now, the last part is resilience. This resilience is what? To bounce back, to come back to normal. एक बार डैमेज हो गया, उसको हम कैसे कितनी जल्दी वापस नॉर्मलाइज करते हैं. This is one of the duties of this authority. तीनों चीजें, prevention, then preparation, and then the actual help, and then resilience, कितना वापस जल्दी से उनको नॉर्मल किया जाए, to bounce back. Now composition is there is chairperson and other members not exceeding 9 members. Prime Minister is the ex officio chairperson. That means Prime Minister plus other 9 members. Now, other members are nominated by chairperson and they have the status of Minister of State. Then, among the members, one vice chairman is appointed or nominated by the chairperson who has the status of a cabinet minister. Objectives of NDMA. This is important. This is what I was mentioning. To promote a culture of prevention, preparedness, and resilience. I have already explained. Now it should be very easy for you to understand and remember. To encourage mitigation measure, that means how to mitigate the suffering of the people who have suffered this disaster. To mainstream disaster management into the developmental planning process. That means if a disaster has occurred, then it should be the planning process. It should be included in the planning process how to set it right, set the damage right, how to mitigate the suffering of the people. And that can be because that needs money, that needs effort, so that has to be done through proper planning process. So that is to be included in the total planning, as we have discussed when we have seen when we discussed the planning commission. To establish institutional techno-legal framework. Institutional framework and techno-legal, because when damage is done, lot of technical support is required, and then legal support in terms of settlement of claims and other issues which involve legal issues. To ensure efficient mechanism for identification, assessment and monitoring of disaster risk. So what are the risk areas? What are the risk factors which can lead to a disaster? To develop contemporary forecasting and early warning system. This is very important. If there is a proper forecast and there is an early warning, it is very easy to manage the situation, to take preventive steps and get the administration prepared, to ensure efficient response and relief, to undertake reconstruction as an opportunity to build disaster resilient structures, to promote a productive and proactive partnership with the media for disaster management. This is also proper reporting has to be done. Not to create a panic, but to bring out the real situation to the notice of the concerned authorities. So functions are to lay down policies on disaster management, approve the national plan, approve plans prepared by ministries and departments, lay down guidelines to be followed by state DMAs. There are state DMAs also, and the NDMA issues guidelines to them. To lay down guidelines to be followed by different ministries, to coordinate enforcement and implementation of policy and plan for disaster management, to recommend provision of funds for the purpose of mitigation, to provide support to other countries as determined by the central government. Because this is a very specialized kind of agency. So sometimes the other countries might also require our help or support. So, but with the as determined by the central government to lay down broad policies and guidelines for functioning of the National Institute of Disaster Management. There is a National Institute where there are different courses run for disaster management. Now there are additional functions which are also very important, guidelines for minimum standards of relief. What should be the minimum standard of relief in case of a disaster? Recommends relief in repayment of loans or grant of fresh loans on concession. Now, this is very important. National Disaster Response Force, NDRF. You might have heard that so many battalions or so many companies of NDRF have been rushed to a particular place of disaster. They are basically like police force, but they work under the superintendence and direction and control of the NDMA. Their NDMA will direct them as to where to go and how the assistance is to be provided. People have to be evacuated. They have boats, they have special equipment to evacuate and help the people. Authorities authorizes the concerned department to make emergency procurement. Sometimes, in the case of disaster, there may be a shortage of some commodities. So, some emergency procurement has to be made. Their annual report is submitted to the central government and laid before the parliament. That is both the houses. I told you on the lines of NDMA, there are state disaster management authorities. Now, composition is chairperson and other members not exceeding 9, just on the lines of the NDMA. So, Chief Minister is the ex officio chairperson, and then he nominates the other members, and Vice Chairman holds the rank of a Cabinet Minister. Now, chairpersons of the State Executive Committee are the ex officio member of the SDMA and acts as the ex officio chief executive officer, because some officer is required to look after the administrative work. Administrative work means correspondence or communication with the other authorities, getting information or passing on information to other authorities. Functions are almost the same. It is state disaster management policies made. So guidelines, what guidelines NDMA has issued, they will have to follow that. To approve the disaster management plans, to lay down guidelines, to coordinate and implementation of the state plan, to recommend provisions of funds for mitigation and preparedness measures, to review the development plans of the different departments, and to review the measures being taken for mitigation capacity building and preparedness by the departments of the state government. So every state government must also have at the micro level, that is at the district level, management authority, disaster management authority for every district. District is the primary unit where administration comes into play when there is any disaster. Chairperson and other members. Chairperson is the collector, district collector, and then there are co-chairpersons, elected representative of the local authority. Like this, they have Zilla Parishad chairperson or the tribal areas chief executive member of the district council. So there are 3 ex officio members: CEO of the DDMA, superintendent of police, and chief medical officer, because their coordination is very much required. NDRF may come later on, but immediately the local police has to provide all this assistance. That is why SP is also made. For medical assistance, the CMO is also made an ex officio member. So not more than 2 other district level officers are appointed by the state government as members. The chief executive officer is appointed by the state government. Functions of the district authority, that under the guidelines issued by NDMA and the state DMA, they have to prepare a disaster management plan for the district. This is the job of this DDMA, where district collector is the head, to coordinate and monitor the implementation of the national policy, state policy, national plan, state plan, and district plan, to identify vulnerable areas to disasters and ensure measures for prevention at the district level as well as by the local authorities, to ensure guidelines are followed by all departments. So the functions are to organize and coordinate specialized training programs for the subordinate officers and the government servants. So they have to be trained, specialized training has to be given. Facilitate community training and awareness programs, to set up, maintain, review and upgrade the mechanism for early warning and dissemination of proper information to the public, how they are to be warned. Like in the case of cyclones, the fishermen have to be stopped from going to the high seas, and that advance warning has to be given by the local authorities. To advise, assist and coordinate activities of the departments of the government at various levels, to identify buildings and places to be used as relief centers or camps. To perform, generally what happens, the school buildings, the panchayat bhavans, they are used, community halls, they are used, even in case, we have used even cinema halls as also relief centers or camps. To perform such other functions as the state government or SDMA may assign to it or as it deems necessary for disaster management in the district. So friends, with this, we have completed 3 major agencies, statutory bodies, the NHRC, SHRC, NDMA, SDMA, DDMA, up to the district level. So disaster management and human rights violation, their redressal were the main topics today. So any question or any clarification by any one of you? Thank you very much. So we'll meet tomorrow. And also, let me tell you, tomorrow is Friday. We may have a session on this Saturday also. Why? Because by Monday, I want to complete these topics of polity, and particularly those which are overlapping and which we will be using in our law optional syllabus also. So I am just structuring it. We'll give you, this is kind of an advanced information to you, but there might be a session on Saturday, but that session will not be in the evening, it will be in the afternoon, around 1 o'clock or so. Time limit will be same, 2 hours from 1 to 3. Let us see how it develops, and we will give you prior intimation, but this is an advanced information to you to structure, to schedule your program, your engagements accordingly. Thank you very much. Good night and all the best.
For more videos, subscribe to BN by IAS and press the bell icon to never miss an update.